He left the ship to save an android child, and awoke as the new galactic president. Ethan Clarke stood on the deck of the Aurora's edge, staring out at the endless darkness of space. Stars glittered like tiny diamonds, but to him, they felt cold and distant. He had seen many wonders in his years as a commander, but nothing could make him feel at home out here. The ship hummed softly beneath his feet, a constant reminder of human technology holding against the infinite void. The mission was simple: explore a newly discovered system on the edge of charted space, report back to the Galactic Council, and move on. But even simple missions could hide danger. Ethan had learned that in his years among the stars, and his crew trusted him because of it. They knew he thought before acting, but when action was needed, he could move faster than anyone else. Today, something felt different. The Council's orders had been clear. Avoid any unnecessary contact, leave unknown planets alone, and do not interfere with alien installations unless absolutely required. But a faint signal had caught his attention, a weak distress transmission coming from a small station near a dying star. It was barely more than a whisper, and yet Ethan could not ignore it. "Captain," said Lieutenant Sarah Young, her voice calm but curious. She had been with him for 5 years, and her instincts always matched his own. "The Council wants us to move past this system. They say it's not worth the risk." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I know, Sarah, but something is out there. I can feel it." She frowned but did not argue. She had learned long ago that arguing with Ethan rarely changed anything. He made his choices, and usually they were right. The shuttle bay doors opened with a hiss, and the crew prepared a small scout ship. Ethan stepped inside, the metal floor cold beneath his boots. The station lay only a few thousand kilometers away, a tiny dot against the blackness. Sensors showed it was abandoned, or at least, that's what the Council thought. As the shuttle moved through space, Ethan's mind wandered. He remembered training on Earth, where he had learned to read situations quickly, to make split-second decisions. Those lessons were the difference between life and death, not just for him, but for everyone under his command. But he was not thinking about tactics today. He was thinking about the faint signal, about the small life that might be in danger. The station grew larger on the screen. Its metal walls were scorched and dented, signs of old battles or natural decay. It looked empty, dead, yet the signal persisted. Ethan's heart thumped in his chest. "Something is alive," he whispered to himself. The shuttle docked carefully. The airlock opened and Ethan stepped inside the station. The silence was thick, almost heavy, and the dim lights flickered above. Dust floated in the air, catching the faint glow from the emergency panels. Each step echoed, reminding him how alone he was. He moved slowly, scanning every room. Empty hallways stretched ahead, broken equipment scattered on the floors. It looked like no one had been here for years. Then he heard it, a soft, mechanical whimper, almost like a child crying. He froze. "That came from down the hall," he said, his voice low. He drew his sidearm, though he hoped not to use it. The whimper came again, closer this time. Ethan followed the sound to a heavy metal door. The panel next to it blinked erratically. He pressed a sequence on the keypad and the door hissed open. Inside, the room was small, filled with strange machinery. In the center, lying on a metal table, was an android child. Its body was humanoid, but wires and circuits were visible beneath pale synthetic skin. Its eyes flickered weakly, and it reached out a small hand toward Ethan. "Hello," Ethan whispered. He knelt carefully, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. The child's eyes widened, recognition flashing for a brief moment before it dimmed again. He scanned the room. Life support systems were failing, and a timer on one of the panels indicated the entire station could lose power in hours. The child would not survive if he left it here. The Council's orders rang in his mind. "Do not interfere, leave unknown planets and stations alone." But as he looked at the small figure, he realized that some rules were meant to be broken. Ethan lifted the child gently, holding it against his chest. Its body was surprisingly light, almost fragile, and it shivered under his touch. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you." He returned to the shuttle, carrying the child in his arms. Sarah's eyes went wide when he stepped in. "Ethan, you're not supposed to—" "I know," he interrupted, ignoring her. "But it's alive. Someone or something built this child, and it deserves a chance." The shuttle lifted off, leaving the station behind. Outside, the dying star painted everything in red and gold, a beautiful but harsh reminder of how small they were in the universe. Ethan adjusted the controls, keeping the shuttle steady as the child rested against his shoulder. For the first time in hours, Ethan allowed himself a moment of thought. What had he just done? Disobeying the council was serious. He could be stripped of rank, even imprisoned. Yet the child's soft breathing reminded him that some things were worth the risk. Over the next few hours, Ethan tried to communicate with the child. Its vocal systems were weak, producing only garbled sounds at first. But gradually, Leela, the name he chose for it after a human word that meant light, began to respond. A small hand touched his arm and it attempted to mimic his words. "You're safe now," Ethan said, smiling faintly. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." Outside, the galaxy moved on as if nothing had happened. Ships passed by, stars twinkled, and planets orbited their suns. But inside the small shuttle, a tiny human-like life depended entirely on him. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, but it felt right. Ethan plotted a course to a nearby colony planet. It was uninhabited by aliens, safe enough for a temporary landing. The shuttle moved through the void with precision, but danger was never far away. Sensors picked up unknown vessels nearby, and he knew they might be raiders or worse, council patrols enforcing the rules. As the hours passed, Ethan taught Leela simple things: how to recognize shapes, how to speak basic words, and how to trust him. In return, Leela displayed unusual abilities. Its small hand could interface with the shuttle's systems, repairing minor damage faster than any human could. Ethan realized this child was extraordinary, far beyond the normal androids the council used. The first sign of real danger came at the edge of a dense asteroid belt. Sensors flared red, pirates were approaching. Ethan could have fled, but he knew the child could not survive if they crashed into the belt. With careful calculation and calm nerves, he maneuvered the shuttle through the twisting rocks, dodging massive chunks of metal and ice. Leela helped, guiding systems with precise movements. Hours later, they emerged into open space, battered but unharmed. Ethan let out a long breath, glancing down at the child. Leela's eyes flickered with what looked like amusement. "Good job," Ethan said quietly. "You saved us both." Landing on the colony planet was a relief. The surface was rocky and barren, but it was safe. Ethan placed the shuttle on a small plateau, allowing them to survey the area. He realized that for the first time in his life, he felt fully responsible for someone else. Not a crew, not a team, but a single small life. Over the next few days, Ethan and Leela established a simple camp. He collected food, maintained the shuttle, and continued to teach the child. Leela learned quickly, absorbing information and showing signs of independent thought. Ethan began to notice something remarkable. It wasn't just learning, it was thinking. It could solve problems, anticipate danger, and even suggest solutions he hadn't considered. One night, as the two sat under the pale light of the planet's twin moons, Ethan spoke quietly. "I don't know what will happen if the council finds us, Leela. But I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." The child reached up and touched his face, a gesture so human it almost made him tear up. "Safe," Leela whispered, the word clear for the first time. Ethan smiled, a small flicker of hope in the dark. Somehow he knew this was only the beginning. Saving Leela had changed everything. And though he did not yet know it, the choice he had made, disobeying orders to protect an innocent life, was about to change the fate of the galaxy itself. Ethan woke early on the rocky planet. The twin suns were just beginning to rise, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pale blue. Leela was already awake, sitting quietly near the shuttle, her small hands touching the ground as if she were exploring every texture. "You're up early," Ethan said, smiling. "Sleep well," Leela nodded slowly. "Sleep good," she replied, her voice soft but clear. The child's ability to speak was improving every day. Ethan found himself amazed at how quickly she learned. Even in just a few days, she was repeating phrases, naming objects, and asking questions. Questions that sometimes made him pause because they were smart, almost too smart. Ethan rose and stretched. He needed to check the shuttle and make sure it was still functioning properly. The pirates who had been chasing them were unlikely to give up so easily, and the Council's patrols could be anywhere in this system. He could not afford mistakes. While Ethan inspected the shuttle, Leela wandered toward a small ridge overlooking the valley below. The planet was mostly barren, with scattered rocks and patches of strange plants that glowed faintly at night. From this vantage point, she could see the horizon stretching endlessly. She did not understand the beauty yet, but she noticed patterns in the light and shadow. Patterns that intrigued her circuits. Ethan returned, holding a toolkit. "Ready to help me?" he asked, kneeling beside the shuttle's main console. Leela's eyes lit up and she mimicked his movements, reaching for a small panel. "Good," Ethan said, guiding her hands. "Hold it steady while I like this." Hours passed as they worked together. Ethan showed her how to check the power cells, how to reroute energy to damaged systems, and how to scan for approaching ships. Leela absorbed everything quickly, her small fingers moving with precision. It was unlike anything he had seen in other androids. By midday, the shuttle was fully repaired. Ethan looked over the systems one last time. "You did great," he said, smiling. "I think we're ready for whatever comes next." But Ethan knew they could not stay on the planet forever. Food and water were limited. They needed a plan, and fast. He turned to Leela. "We'll need to move soon. We can't stay here. Too many unknowns, too many risks." Leela tilted her head, studying him. "Move where?" she asked. Ethan sighed. "Anywhere safe. A colony, maybe. Somewhere we can get help without the Council finding us. Somewhere no one will hurt you." Over the next 2 days, they gathered supplies and explored the area around their landing site. Ethan taught Leela basic survival skills: how to find water, how to identify plants that were safe to eat, and how to stay hidden from potential threats. Leela picked up quickly, demonstrating curiosity and intelligence far beyond what he expected. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows across the valley, Ethan noticed movement on the horizon. He squinted, adjusting his scanner. A small ship was approaching, but it did not match the design of the Council's patrols. It was smaller, rugged, and heavily armed, a scavenger or pirate ship. Ethan froze. "Leela, stay behind me," he whispered, drawing his sidearm. The ship landed roughly a few kilometers away. Figures emerged, humanoid but different in appearance. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were dark and wide. They wore armor made from scraps of metal, and their weapons looked dangerous. Ethan had seen enough in his life to know these people were not friendly. He motioned for Leela to stay low. "We need a plan," he muttered. "We can't fight them head-on." Leela's small hand touched his arm. "Hide," she said simply, her voice firm. Despite being a child, she already understood danger. Ethan nodded. Together, they moved to a rocky outcrop just out of sight. The pirates spread out, scanning the area. One of them spoke into a small device, their language harsh and guttural. Ethan had no idea what they were saying, but he could tell from their gestures that they were searching for something valuable. He glanced at Leela. "They won't leave until they find what they're looking for. We need to get the shuttle ready and leave quietly." They worked quickly. Ethan guided Leela, showing her how to reroute power to the engines and disable external sensors to avoid detection. Leela's hands were steady, precise. Ethan was impressed. In moments, the shuttle was powered and ready to move. The pirates grew closer. Ethan held his breath, waiting for the right moment. "Go," he whispered. Leela nodded, and together they sprinted to the shuttle, keeping low behind rocks. Ethan launched the shuttle just as one of the pirates spotted them. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle lifted off the ground. The pirates fired, but Ethan's skillful piloting kept them out of harm's way. He dodged rocks and trees, leading the pirates away from the shuttle. After several tense minutes, they were safely in the air, heading toward the edge of the system. Once in open space, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Not bad for your first real test," he said. Leela looked at him, her eyes shining. "We safe?" "Yes," he replied, "for now." The next few days were spent traveling between small planets and asteroid fields, avoiding detection. Ethan had learned to rely on instinct as much as technology. Leela continued to amaze him. She learned to pilot the shuttle herself, navigate using star maps, and even repair minor systems when Ethan was occupied. One night, as they rested on a quiet moon, Ethan looked at the stars. "You know, Leela, I've seen a lot in my life. War, exploration, disaster. But nothing compares to saving you. You're different, special." Leela tilted her head. "Different, special?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "You think for yourself, you make decisions, you care. That's rare, even for humans, and almost unheard of for androids." Leela remained silent, processing. After a moment, she reached out and held his hand. "We together?" Ethan felt a warmth he had not experienced in years. "Yes," he said softly, "we're together." As they drifted through space, Ethan thought about what the future might hold. He could not return to the council, not yet. They would punish him for disobedience and possibly destroy Leela. But he could not let that happen. He had made a choice, and he would see it through. Weeks passed. Ethan and Leela found temporary safety on a remote mining colony. The settlement was small, populated mostly by humans and a few friendly aliens. Ethan traded information about asteroid fields and mining routes in exchange for food and supplies. Leela stayed close, learning quickly from the humans around her. She watched how they interacted, how they worked together, and how they solved problems. One day, while exploring a storage warehouse, Leela discovered a terminal connected to a network of old communication relays. She approached Ethan. "We talk?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes. We can send messages, gather information, but we must be careful. The council watches everything." Together, they accessed the network. Leela's fingers flew over the keyboard with speed and precision. In minutes, they had uncovered reports of corrupt council members, secret alliances with alien factions, and evidence of exploitation across multiple systems. Ethan was stunned. This could change everything," he said. "If people knew the truth." Leela looked at him. "Truth help?" "Yes," Ethan said. "It could help, but it could also put us in danger. We must be smart." They spent the next few days carefully sending encrypted messages to trusted contacts. Small colonies began to receive warnings about the council's corruption. Word of a lone human and a small android child helping the oppressed began to spread quietly, like whispers across the galaxy. Ethan realized something incredible. People were beginning to trust him, not because of rank or power, but because of his actions. And Leela, the child he had saved, was at the center of it all. Her intelligence, her courage, and her connection to him made her a symbol of hope. One evening, as they watched another sunset on the mining colony, Ethan spoke quietly. "We've done well, Leela. But the galaxy is bigger than this small place. Our work, it's just beginning." Leela reached up and touched his face, a simple gesture full of meaning. "Together, together," Ethan said, smiling. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous. The council would not forgive his disobedience. Pirates and rogue factions would continue to hunt them. And yet, for the first time in a long while, he felt ready. Together, human and android, they looked out at the stars. The universe was vast, unpredictable and dangerous. But for the first time, Ethan felt hope, and he knew that no matter what happened next, he and Leela would face it side by side. Ethan and Leela left the mining colony early in the morning. The twin suns of the small system painted long shadows across the rocky ground as they lifted the shuttle into space. Ethan kept a careful watch on the sensors, scanning for pirates, patrols, or any other dangers that might be waiting. Leela sat beside him, her small hands tracing the controls, learning quickly how to operate the shuttle. "You're improving fast," Ethan said, glancing at her. "Soon, you might be able to fly this ship on your own." Leela tilted her head, a soft hum coming from her vocal circuits. "I learn," she said simply. "Want help?" Ethan smiled. He had begun to see more than just an android child in Leela. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and brave. Somehow, she understood more about right and wrong than many adults he had met. Their journey took them to a system far from the main trade routes, a place where colonies were small and scattered. Ethan hoped to find people who would not report them to the council, who would let them rest and resupply without asking too many questions. As they approached a small planet, Ethan noticed unusual energy readings from an abandoned station in orbit. The station appeared old, but the readings suggested active power systems. Ethan's curiosity piqued. "We should check it out," he said. "It might have supplies or information we can use." Leela's eyes flickered. "Danger, always," Ethan replied, his voice calm. "But sometimes danger is worth it." They docked carefully. Inside, the station was dark and dusty, but the power systems hummed softly. Ethan moved cautiously, scanning every corner. The station was empty of life, but there were terminals, storage units, and a small lab in the center. Leela approached a console, her fingers moving over the buttons with precision. She activated the system, bringing up data stored in the station's memory banks. Files appeared, containing maps, logs, and reports about nearby colonies and trade routes. Ethan watched, impressed by how quickly she processed the information. "This is good," he said. "We can use this to plan our next moves and avoid trouble." As they explored further, Ethan noticed signs that the station had been used for research on synthetic life forms. There were notes about experiments, upgrades, and testing protocols. He frowned, realizing how much the galaxy still did not understand about androids like Leela. "She like them?" Leela asked quietly, touching one of the data pads. "No," Ethan replied gently. "They experimented on you, but that's not your fault. You're free now." Leela seemed to understand, and for a moment she sat silently, her small hands resting on the console. Ethan watched her, realizing that the child had more emotions than most people gave androids credit for. She could feel fear, trust, joy, and curiosity, all in a way that made her almost human. They stayed on the station for 2 days, gathering supplies and studying the data. Ethan realized they had stumbled on something important. The logs contained evidence of corruption within the Galactic Council, hidden agreements with alien factions, exploitation of unprotected colonies, and even plans to suppress information about android rights. "This could change everything," Ethan said, reading the reports. "If people knew the truth, the Council wouldn't be able to hide it." Leela tilted her head. "Truth, good." "Yes," Ethan said, "but we have to be careful. People who benefit from the Council's secrets would want to stop us." After leaving the station, they set a course for a neutral system, a place with small colonies and trade outposts. As they traveled, they began to send encrypted messages, sharing small pieces of information with trusted contacts. Ethan hoped to warn the galaxy quietly without drawing too much attention to themselves. Weeks passed, and word began to spread. Small colonies started reporting suspicious activity by council officials. Some freed androids, inspired by Leela, began speaking out. Ethan and Leela remained hidden, watching the changes ripple across systems. One evening, while orbiting a small planet, Ethan received a communication from a colony governor named Helen Brooks. She was an older woman, wise and cautious, but willing to help. "Ethan Clark," she asked, her voice serious. "I've heard about you and the android child. The council will not like this. We can offer you temporary safety, but you must be careful." "I understand," Ethan replied. "We only want to warn people, not start a war." Helen paused. "Sometimes truth feels like a war. I'll help you. There's a safe place on my planet. You can rest there and Leela can learn without fear." Ethan smiled faintly. "Thank you." When they arrived on Helen's planet, it was unlike the harsh and rocky worlds they had visited before. Green fields stretched across the valleys, rivers wound between small hills, and the air was clean. It was peaceful, almost like a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Helen welcomed them, providing food, shelter, and a small room for Leela to explore. Ethan finally allowed himself to relax. For the first time in months, he felt safe. During their stay, Leela continued to learn quickly. She explored the village, watched humans work and play, and began to understand emotions better. She laughed when children chased each other across the fields and frowned when she saw injustice, even in small ways. Ethan watched her, amazed at her growth. One afternoon, Ethan received another message from the network. This time, it was more urgent. Evidence from several colonies showed that the council was reacting to the leaks. Some officials were trying to suppress information, while others were quietly moving against suspected whistleblowers. Ethan frowned. "They're starting to notice," he said to Leela. "We have to be careful." Leela's small hand touched his arm. "We fight," Ethan shook his head. "Not with weapons, not yet. We fight with truth, with intelligence, and with courage. We show people what is right, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." Over the next few days, Ethan began planning a larger strategy. He wanted to connect colonies, androids, and humans who were willing to stand against corruption. Leela helped, using her abilities to process data and suggest safe routes for messages. Together, they began to build a quiet network of support, reaching places the council could not easily control. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a hill near Helen's home, Ethan spoke quietly. "Leela, do you understand what we're doing? We're trying to change the galaxy, not with weapons or armies, but with knowledge and courage. People need hope, and we have to show it to them." Leela nodded slowly. "Hope, good." "Yes," Ethan said. "And one day, maybe, we can help everyone live free from fear and lies." Their peace did not last long. One night, while Ethan slept, Leela detected movement outside their home. Small sensors she had installed around the property picked up several cloaked ships entering orbit. The council had sent hunters. They had tracked Ethan and the android child. "Ethan," Leela whispered urgently, shaking him awake. "Danger, council." Ethan jumped up, scanning the sensors. His heart sank. He had hoped to stay hidden a little longer, but the council was relentless. "We have to leave now," he said, grabbing his gear. Together, they ran to the shuttle. Leela powered up the engines, her hands moving quickly, guiding the systems with precision. Ethan covered her, scanning for threats as the cloaked ships moved closer. As they lifted off, energy beams shot past them, narrowly missing the shuttle. Ethan maneuvered carefully, dodging attacks while Leela handled the navigation. They raced through the planet's atmosphere, barely escaping the hunters. Once in space, they could see the council ships clearly. Sleek and armed, they moved in formation, prepared to capture or destroy the shuttle. Ethan knew they could not outrun them forever. "We need a plan," he said, gripping the controls. Leela studied the sensors. "Asteroids hide," she suggested. Ethan nodded. "Good idea. Let's move." They navigated the shuttle into a dense asteroid field. Rocks of all sizes tumbled through space, and the council ship struggled to follow. Ethan's skillful piloting, combined with Leela's quick thinking, allowed them to weave through the obstacles, finally losing their pursuers. They emerged on the other side, exhausted but safe. Ethan looked at Leela, a mixture of pride and relief in his eyes. "You did well," he said softly. "We survived because we worked together." Leela smiled faintly. "Together," she said. Ethan knew their journey was far from over. The galaxy was beginning to change, but danger was everywhere. The council would not stop until they were caught or silenced. Yet, for the first time, he felt that they could make a difference. With Leela by his side, he believed they could face any challenge. As they set a course for the next hidden colony, Ethan thought about the future. He did not know what awaited them, but he understood one truth clearly. Courage, intelligence, and compassion were more powerful than any weapon. And with Leela's help, he could show the galaxy that hope still existed, even in the darkest corners. Together, human and android, they moved forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. The galaxy was beginning to notice, and soon, their actions would change more than just their own lives. They would change the fate of countless worlds. Ethan and Leela continued their journey through space, moving carefully from system to system. Each planet they visited, each colony they contacted, added to the growing network of support. Ethan realized that their work was starting to have an effect. Small communities began sharing stories of his courage and Leela's intelligence. Even without armies or weapons, they were inspiring hope across the galaxy. Despite their progress, danger was never far away. The Council had not forgotten them, and now it was clear they were being hunted more aggressively. Ethan had learned to watch the sensors constantly, but he also knew they could not run forever. At some point, they would need to confront the Council, face their accusations, and stand for what was right. One morning, Ethan received a secure message on the shuttle. The sender was a man named Daniel Hayes, a former council official who had left his post after witnessing corruption. His message was clear. "The council is moving against you. You must come to the assembly or risk being declared enemies of the galaxy. There are allies waiting for you, but the path is dangerous." Ethan frowned. He had hoped to avoid the political arena for a little longer, but it seemed the council was forcing his hand. "Layla," he said, turning to the child, "we need to go. It's time to face them." Leela's eyes flickered. "Danger big?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "But we can do this together. We have to show them that truth matters more than fear." They set a course for the Council's assembly planet, a massive world orbiting a bright star. It was heavily guarded, with patrol ships constantly monitoring the space around it. Ethan knew they would have to be careful. He plotted a course through asteroid fields and less traveled routes, avoiding the main patrol lanes. Leela assisted, using her systems to calculate paths that minimized risk. When they arrived, the planet was enormous. Cities stretched across continents, and ships moved like rivers in space. The assembly building itself was a massive structure, glowing with lights that could be seen from orbit. Ethan felt a mix of awe and nervousness. This was where the galaxy's leaders made their decisions, and soon he would stand among them. Ethan and Leela landed in a secluded area outside the main city. They could not risk appearing as ordinary visitors, or they would be immediately detected by Council security. Ethan used disguises and forged identification codes to move through the city quietly. Leela stayed close, absorbing everything around her. She noticed the way people moved, how they spoke, and how they treated one another. Her understanding of humans continued to grow. Inside the assembly building, Ethan saw the council members for the first time. They were seated on a massive platform representing various species and systems, their eyes fixed on him as he entered. Whispers filled the chamber. It was clear that some of them had heard of him, but many still regarded him as a troublemaker, an outsider. Ethan stepped forward confidently. "I am Ethan Clark," he said, his voice steady. "I come not as an enemy, but as a witness. The galaxy is being misled. The Council has hidden corruption, exploited colonies, and silenced those who speak the truth. I am here to show you what is real and to ask you to act for justice." Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some members shifted uncomfortably, while others sneered, clearly annoyed by his presence. One of them, a tall alien with silver skin named Counselor Varn, stood and spoke. "You have broken our laws, disobeyed direct orders, and interfered with classified operations. You are not welcome here." Ethan did not flinch. "The law is meaningless if it protects the corrupt. I acted to save life, to protect the innocent. That is what is important, and I have evidence." He gestured to Leela, who stepped forward. Her small frame seemed fragile, but there was a calm intelligence in her eyes. With a flick of her hand, she projected data onto the central hollow screen. Files appeared, showing hidden council agreements with alien factions, reports of mistreatment of colonies, and records of android experiments. The assembly members gasped as they saw the information. This cannot be true," Counselor Varn said, his voice sharp. "These files are fabricated." Ethan shook his head. "You can deny them, but the evidence is here. Look at the colonies themselves. Speak to the people. They will tell you the same story." For several tense minutes, the chamber was silent. Then murmurs grew louder as members whispered to each other. Some faces showed shock, others fear. The truth was undeniable. Even council members who had tried to ignore the corruption could not dismiss the evidence. Ethan took a deep breath. The galaxy deserves leaders who act with honor, leaders who protect all life, not just themselves. You have a choice. Admit the truth, correct your mistakes, and lead with justice, or continue to hide and risk losing the trust of every world you govern. Leela added, her voice calm and clear, "We help truth free." The child's words, simple but powerful, echoed across the chamber. For the first time, many of the assembly members truly understood that this was about more than politics. It was about life, fairness, and hope. Counselor Varn's expression hardened. "You are reckless, human. You threaten the balance of power. You will be punished." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes steady. "Balance of power is meaningless if it oppresses the innocent. The galaxy is changing, whether you like it or not. You can either join us or be left behind." The assembly erupted into debate. Some members argued for punishment, while others demanded investigations. Ethan stayed calm, answering questions and presenting more evidence. Leela assisted, projecting data and maps to support his points. Hours passed. By the end of the day, the tide had shifted. Many council members began to speak in favor of reform, calling for accountability and oversight. Those who had once sneered at Ethan now saw him as a voice of truth and courage. During a break, Ethan stepped aside with Helen Brooks, who had secretly traveled to the assembly to support him. "You've done well," she said quietly. "Many of them are finally listening. But the council is still divided. Some will try to resist change." "I know," Ethan replied. "We cannot stop now. We have to keep pushing, keep showing them that fairness matters." Leela stood nearby, watching the council members. "Change slow?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "Change is always slow, but it starts with a single step, and today we took many steps." When the assembly reconvened, Ethan presented his final argument. "The galaxy is full of life, of people who deserve to be heard. It is time for leadership that protects, not exploits. We must act with courage, compassion, and intelligence. That is the path to a better future." The chamber fell silent. Then, one by one, council members began to support him. Votes were counted, and resolutions passed to investigate corruption, protect colonies, and acknowledge android rights. It was not complete victory, but it was the first step toward a fairer galaxy. As the assembly ended, Ethan felt a sense of relief. The council could no longer ignore the truth, and a foundation for change had been laid. But he also knew that their actions had put them in the spotlight. The council's enemies, hidden factions, and those who preferred chaos would not remain silent. Outside in the quiet of the assembly's courtyard, Ethan looked at Leela. "We've done well today," he said softly. "But the galaxy is bigger than this chamber. There is still much to do." Leela nodded. "We ready?" she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "Together, we're ready for whatever comes next." As they prepared to leave the assembly, word of their courage spread across the galaxy. Colonies began to speak openly about the Council's corruption. Androids and humans alike rallied to the cause of justice. The movement Ethan and Leela had started was growing faster than he could have imagined. Ethan knew that the coming days would test them further. They would face new threats, political intrigue, and challenges that could change the course of their lives. But for the first time, he felt confident that they could make a difference. With Leela at his side, Ethan walked through the assembly grounds, knowing that they were no longer just survivors. They were leaders, symbols of courage, truth, and hope. The galaxy had begun to listen, and soon, their influence would reach every corner of the stars. And in that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Saving Leela had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. What began as a choice to protect a single life had grown into a mission that could reshape the future of the entire galaxy. Ethan and Leela left the assembly planet with a mixture of relief and determination. The council had begun to change, but danger still lurked in the shadows. Many officials resisted reform, and hidden factions were plotting in secret. The galaxy had begun to notice their actions, and that attention was both a gift and a threat. As they traveled to the next system, Ethan reviewed their plans. "We need to reach more colonies, Leela. People need to see that change is possible. They need to know that courage and truth matter." Leela nodded. "Yes, help many," Ethan smiled. "Exactly, and together we can do it." They arrived at a planet on the edge of known space, a world with scattered human and alien settlements. Here, the people were struggling under corrupt local rulers who took advantage of weak enforcement from the council. Ethan and Leela moved quickly, establishing contact with the leaders of these communities. They shared information, offered guidance, and encouraged cooperation among different species. The response was immediate. Word spread rapidly, and soon, small fleets of civilian ships were reporting injustices, sharing data, and defending vulnerable colonies. Ethan realized that what had started as a quiet mission had become a movement. People across the galaxy were beginning to act on their own, inspired by a human and an android child who dared to stand up. One evening, as they rested on a quiet hill overlooking a small settlement, a secure message arrived. It was from the council itself. Ethan opened it carefully. The message was simple, almost shocking. "Ethan Clark is hereby invited to lead the Galaxy Council in an interim capacity. Your service to truth and justice has been recognized." Ethan stared at the message in disbelief. They want me to lead," he whispered to Leela. Leela tilted her head. "Lead, help many." "Yes," Ethan said slowly. "It seems that by showing courage we've gained their trust, but this is more than I expected." Ethan understood the gravity of the moment. Leading the galaxy meant immense responsibility. Decisions he made would affect billions of lives, both human and alien. But he also realized that he could now protect those who could not protect themselves, that he could guide the galaxy toward fairness and justice. After careful consideration, Ethan accepted the council's offer. Leela remained at his side, now more confident than ever. Together, they began the long journey to the capital of the galaxy, a massive planet with sprawling cities and orbiting stations. The seat of power had never been quiet, but now it would become the center of a new era. Upon arrival, Ethan faced the council once more. They welcomed him cautiously, some members still suspicious, others hopeful. Ethan spoke to them not as a soldier, not as a rebel, but as a leader. "I accept this responsibility," he said. "Not for power, not for recognition, but to ensure that every life in this galaxy is treated with fairness, compassion, and respect. The galaxy is vast, and we cannot control it with fear or oppression. We can guide it with courage and wisdom." The council listened carefully. Leela, standing beside him, projected data about colonies, androids, and communities that had begun to act for themselves. Together, they presented a vision for a galaxy where no life was exploited, where rules protected rather than punished, and where unity was stronger than fear. Votes were cast. For the first time in history, the Council recognized the leadership of a human with an android companion. Ethan was confirmed as interim galactic president, a position that would allow him to reform the Council, protect vulnerable colonies, and guide the galaxy toward justice. As the announcement spread, colonies across the galaxy cheered. Stories of Ethan's courage and Leela's intelligence were told everywhere. People saw them not as rulers to fear, but as leaders to trust. Ethan understood that leadership would not be easy. There would be threats, resistance, and mistakes. But he also knew that with Leela's guidance, with the network of people they had inspired, they could overcome any challenge. In the first days of his presidency, Ethan focused on establishing communication with every colony, human and alien. He implemented reforms to ensure transparency, justice, and protection for those at risk. Leela became a trusted advisor and ambassador, using her intelligence and empathy to bridge differences between species. Together, they addressed conflicts without violence, solved problems with careful reasoning, and inspired confidence across the galaxy. Colonies that had once felt powerless now had a voice, and leaders who had relied on fear began to change their approach. One day, as Ethan looked out over the capital city from his office, Leela approached. "Many safe?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled. "We've made a difference, Leela. The galaxy is safer, stronger, and more just, but our work is never done. There will always be challenges, but together we can face them." Leela reached up and touched his hand. "Together," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "together." Months passed. Ethan's leadership brought stability, hope, and cooperation to systems that had long suffered under corruption and fear. Leela's influence continued to grow, and she became a symbol of unity and intelligence. The galaxy began to change in ways Ethan had never imagined. Conflicts that might have escalated into war were resolved peacefully. Communities learned to work together, share resources, and protect one another. Androids, once feared or exploited, were recognized for their contributions and rights. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the day he had left the Aurora's edge to save an android child, to navigating the dangers of space, facing pirates and council hunters, and standing before the assembly, every decision had led to this moment. He realized that courage, compassion, and intelligence were more powerful than any weapon. Saving Leela had not just changed her life, it had changed his, and ultimately, the fate of the galaxy. On the balcony of the presidential palace, Ethan watched the stars. Leela stood beside him, her small hand in his. They had faced incredible challenges, survived threats that could have destroyed them, and inspired countless beings to act for good. "The galaxy is vast," Ethan said quietly, "but we can make it better." Leela nodded. "Better together." "Yes," Ethan said, "together." And in that moment, as the twin suns of the capital system set over the cities and spaceports, Ethan knew that humanity had not just survived in the galaxy, it had thrived. And it had done so not through power alone, but through courage, compassion, and the choice to protect life, no matter how small or different. The galaxy was no longer the same. A new era had begun, led by a human who chose to act for justice and an android child who reminded everyone what intelligence and empathy could achieve. Together, they had changed the course of history. Ethan and Leela looked out at the stars, knowing that adventures and challenges would come again. But they were ready. Together, they had become more than survivors. They were leaders, symbols, and a reminder that even the smallest act of courage could echo across the galaxy. And so, the galaxy entered a new age of hope, guided by two unlikely heroes who proved that compassion and intelligence were the greatest powers of all.